Hello. This is to let everyone know, first of all, that yes, I am still alive. Am I still planning on making more videos? Yes, I am still planning on making more videos. I've had quite a lot of different things happen recently. I apologise for the light not being any better. I've got a lamp on and I've also got my overhead light on. You'll be able to make out basic things. Yes, I am very hairy at the moment. A lot of hair there. Thanks for noticing. Yeah, I would get a haircut. Love to get a haircut. But I've got $32 for the next 10 days. And haircuts around where I live normally cost 15 to 20. So, I mean, I'm not saying that isn't going to happen, but it's not really the highest priority, let's put it that way. Anyway, that actually brings up a reason why, another reason why I actually haven't been posting for a while. It was only one or two, and I probably shouldn't really have bothered about this, really been worried about it, but, I mean, especially given that my appearance now isn't really all that bad. I actually went and cleaned up my beard explicitly for the purpose of this video, even though, given the light's that poor, you're probably not going to notice, but yeah, I do still have a beard, and I like having a beard, so the beard's going to stay, in at least a small form, but, yeah, but yeah, that's actually part of the reason why I've stopped writing, and also posting, and also part of the reason why I started using the voice synthesizer. Even though the last couple of comments have been positive, there were some that were negative about my appearance. One person has recently started saying, "Oh, Phaedress, you're really attractive," you know, and I mean, okay, that's nice. It's certainly a lot nicer than what I got from the boring dispatcher, which was, "You're fugly, basically, you've got a yeast infection," this sort of stuff. But either way, whether the comments are positive or negative, I don't actually post for people to focus or concentrate on my face. I post for people to focus or concentrate on what it is that I'm actually saying. The message, basically, that I'm trying to get across. And that actually is why I started thinking about using the voice synthesizer and using just a static wallpaper, because that way people really would have no choice but focusing on my message, because my message would basically be the only thing that was there. So yeah, I mean, if I post something here, I'm posting it for people to focus on what I'm saying, not on whether you think I'm really, really ugly or whether you actually do think I'm attractive. Either way, that's not why I post. I don't post in order for people to basically gawk at my face. I post because I basically am trying to communicate something, which generally won't have anything to do with my face. So yeah, that was one of the main things that I wanted to say at the moment, that yeah, if I post, I'm not posting because I want to hear what people think of my face. And if it ends up becoming too much of a problem, where I can't basically talk without people constantly, you know, putting more attention on that, whether or not they think that I'm, again, ugly or otherwise, yeah, I'm going to have to possibly think about doing something else with regards to that. Or possibly, again, I'll just stop posting, because, I mean, I like YouTube. I like using it as a means of communication, but there was a lot of stuff here, and it wasn't just a few hater comments, because I really didn't get that many. It wasn't just the hater comments that I was getting, it was some stuff actually that Blunty 3000 was getting. And it's just a heap of negativity and viciousness that a lot of people here get. And I'm really not interested in that, I mean, not only do I not want to get it myself, but look, I will admit, I am somewhat of a sensitive individual. I mean, I'm not like Chris Church, I think his name was, crying about Britney. I mean, I had a look at that and I just thought, well, yeah, I basically felt that it was an extreme reaction, put it that way. Yeah, so, but yeah, I do still, to a degree, as I think all of us do, have emotional reactions to things, I mean, that happens. And so, yeah, I just didn't want to be, there was a lot of negativity here. And I'm probably actually not really talking to or about any of the people who are going to see this. And to a degree, that's frustrating as well, because you sort of do want to actually try and communicate with the people who actually are being negative and try and tell them, hey guys, stop. But of course they won't. Anyway, the other thing that I really wanted to talk about, phaedress sent me a video. Apparently there's a resolution going at the moment to impeach Dick Cheney. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not an American. But I did at one point take a fairly involved interest in American federal politics, and I have read a certain amount about American history. I've already actually put a perspective up about George W. Bush, which some people can check out if they want. But briefly here, in support of the impeachment resolution, because I am in support of it, I would like to reiterate the perspective that I expressed about Bush and basically ask the Americans who are possibly going to see this. Well, I won't ask that question first, but in the context of what I was going to ask, a guy called David Wilcock, who is well, he probably wouldn't like being called a guru, but that's the closest word that I know to it online. He's a incredibly spiritual guy, really has a lot of good stuff to say about a lot of things. Rather than calling him a guru, I mean, that's a bit of an oversimplification. Probably the way that I would really put it is that he basically has managed to gather up a lot of information into one place, which I at one point actually found useful. I'll put a link into his site after I finished up here, so you can go and check it out, any of you who are interested, because he is an interesting guy. But anyway, he told me a story once, and this is in reference to the resolution to impeach Dick Cheney and why I'm in support of it. And it also ties in with what I've already said about George W. Bush and what I believe the whole deal is there. And you can go and watch that if you're interested. That's on my YouTube page as well. But this guy David Wilcock told me a particular Buddhist story once. And it was about a trainee, a student, at a particular Buddhist temple who apparently had been a bit subservient and a bit, like, overly subservient with some of the other people there. I mean, maybe I'm getting the story a bit wrong. Anyway, one of the things that the master decided to do was apparently to actually flog this particular student with a stick that he had there. And it wasn't anything that really permanently hurt the guy at all, but it was very painful. And this went on for, I think it was supposed to be about 6, 10, 12 days, where every day the student would get up, the master would show up, and the student would get flogged. And the student was starting to wonder why he was being flogged. He didn't really know or understand why he was being flogged. But eventually it got to the 12th day when the master was starting to flog the student again, and the student's this time, however, the student's hand flew out and caught the stick and stopped it mid-flight. And when that happened, the master no longer tried to beat the student, because the lesson had basically been learned that if the student wanted to stop the flogging, he basically had to stand up for himself to a sufficient degree in order to stop it. Put his hand out, basically, and stop it. I believe that with the resolution to impeach Dick Cheney, and in fact, any resolution to impeach the entire Bush government, there is a very similar principle at work for the American people going on at the moment. The principle basically is, as a people, you're going to keep getting, to use the analogy, you're going to keep getting flogged until you're willing to actually put your hand out and stop the stick. And as I said in my other video about this topic, I honestly believe that the reason why these men are in power is to actually teach the American people to be willing, once again, to stand up for themselves. You know, I mean, it's like, and this is the way in which I think the proverbial schoolyard bully can at times be a developmental lesson for people. Because the bully's there, he's terrorising everyone. From his perspective, from a sociopathic or sadistic perspective, he's having a great time. You know, all the kids are running around in fear of him. He's probably getting some of the kids' lunch money, so he's eating really well, while some of the other kids are going hungry. You know, and in his mind he's just having a blast. And that sort of thing tends to go on until a couple of the other kids basically confront the bully and essentially say to him, we're not going to allow this sort of stuff to happen anymore. Now I know Bush has talked at great length about how appropriate he thinks it is for the American people to have that attitude with certain individuals in other countries. People like Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, you know, some of the sorts of bogeymen that exist in other countries. And that's fine, because generally speaking, those men have been terrorists. They have been tyrants, usually. But I would actually submit to the American people that, if I may, the rather provocative assertion that you actually have a couple of tyrants in your own midst. And not only do they need to be removed from office, but it needs to happen in fairly short order. And the reason why time is possibly running out for this to be done is because before too much longer, the powers that be, the current apparatus, is going to authorise an expeditionary force to Iran. Now, without digressing too much here, anyone who thinks that the situation in Iraq is currently bad it is nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing at all compared to what the situation would be like in Iran. Iran is further inland. Iran is a lot closer to being landlocked. And the other thing is, the Iranians, at least in the past, I don't know whether this is still true, but the Iranians in the past basically perceived America, or at least the American government, as the proverbial great Satan. So in other words, if the American military were to go there in force, well, it follows. I mean, I'm sure you can understand where I'm going with this logically. I mean, how that would be interpreted by them, theologically speaking. And so, yeah, they would fight absolutely to the death of the last man, especially considering that it would be on their home ground. And anyone who's read Sun Tzu in particular is going to know one of the things that he says, one of the main things that he says that I can remember anyway, never, ever, 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 if you can avoid it, fight a person within their home territory, for two reasons. First of all, because they're going to have a much better understanding of and knowledge of the territory and the ground than you are. And secondly, because they're going to fight literally like caged animals in order to defend it. But yeah, anyway, so that's really the main reason, and I know I've probably been a little bit provocative there. That's probably the main reason why I feel that the need for impeachment proceedings are becoming a little bit more urgent. And another thing, people are probably going to turn around and say, well, hang on a minute, Phaedress, you're not an American. How dare you get involved in our politics and say these sorts of scurrilous, provocative, subversive, potentially anarchic things? I'm going to turn around and say, you're right, I'm not an American. However, I do live in a country whose government is also ordering citizens of this country to go and fight wars that America ostensibly starts. One of those currently is Iraq. And I am sure that if there is an expedition mounted to Iran, that Mr. Howard will receive a request, shall we say, for Australians to go and lose their lives there as well. I will admit, politics is not something that I really get too much involved in. And I am a bit worried about essentially having referred to the Bush administration as tyrants. I mean, even though I believe that they are, that is actually one of the main reasons why I'm sort of uncomfortable about it, because tyrants, generally speaking, don't like being called out as such, and they tend to respond quite possibly in sort of, well, yeah, some rather unfortunate ways. But yeah, the question fundamentally for Americans that I think they need to really be asking themselves about that is, do we want to keep getting beaten? Do we want to keep getting flogged? To use that analogy. Do we want a scenario where the people who are in government, the people who are supposed to be our leaders and are supposed to be the people looking out for us, they're actually the main people that we have to be afraid of? And here's another thing. This will give you an idea of what my own perception is of just government. And I know I've already used the parental analogy with government, and I do feel that it's an appropriate one. But the symbol of the royal house of Egypt, the pharaohs. I don't know whether any of you are familiar with this. The crook and the flail. Now the flail, most of you probably know what that is. That is quite literally an implement of flogging, beating someone on the back. It was a stick with leather straps attached to it, and that's what it was used for. It was used for corporal punishment, flogging people. If somebody had stolen something, somebody had done various things, broken the law, they got flogged. That was one of the punishments. Okay, so that, yes, does have to be a component of government to a degree. But the particular Egyptian symbol that I'm talking about here also had another element. And that other element was a shepherd's crook. Now, a crook was the implement that a shepherd used to lead a flock of sheep. And this implies a protective role. This implies a role of provider, a role of a leader who granted his people food, a leader who was responsible basically for the building of shelter for his people, a leader who was responsible for, in the ancient world, the storing of grain in good years. Like if there was a particularly good harvest, they were supposed to put away a surplus of grain for when lean years came, so that the national society could still continue to function. And they had grain taxes and things like that in order to facilitate that. But you get my point, right? A better analogy, which more people here might relate to, would be the stick and the carrot, in the sense that people are familiar with the idea of the carrot hanging from a string tied to a stick put in front of a donkey in order to get them to move faster. Government is not supposed to exist, I really don't believe, in a position of continual corruption and abuse of its citizenry. And, you know, again, I mean, it's difficult to make these sorts of sit here and make these sorts of statements because, well, they are what some people would define as fighting words to a degree. But look, I really don't need to go on with this. I really don't. I mean, you people know. You know what the scenario is. I mean, you only need to turn on the news on any given day of the week and there's some new scandal coming out of the White House, or there's some new report of more casualties from Iraq, or there's some new report about how in order to fund the Iraq war, Bush has put you deeper into debt, national debt, federal debt, with China. Now, look, maybe I'm wrong about this, but from what I'm seeing, the only thing that the government in Beijing really needs to do is pick up the phone and basically say, we want to call in all that debt. And I really have to ask the question, if that was done, what would happen to the American economy? It's something to think about. So yeah, anyway, I think I've finished being provocative for tonight. But about the only thing that I would do is urge any Americans who might be watching this to go and watch that video that phaedress is circulating around. It's got a guy called Dennis talking about it, and he mentions that there is a congressional resolution at the moment to impeach Vice President Richard Cheney. Go and have a look at it, go and lend your support to it, and realise that the bad stuff that is happening in your country, that you spend a lot of time complaining about, and I know you do because I hear about it on the internet a lot, The only time that all of that bad stuff is going to stop is when you actually decide that it's going to stop. And that's the thing. People just haven't decided yet that they want it to stop. People are still okay with it. You know, more people get sent over to Iraq, more people get killed. Country goes deeper and deeper into debt. Everyone's okay with it. Everyone's okay with it. You know, people are not in a scenario yet. They're not in a place yet where they're really fundamentally upset about that. And I can see a scary future scenario coming if the American people don't do something reasonably soon. I'm not going to go into detail at the moment as to what that scenario is. Methadone for Life, as someone else I watch on here, has gone into some detail about that. And I actually am a subscriber to True Patriot Action, a series of videos that he puts out, which I think are good. But yeah, if any of you do want to do something about this, I would really recommend doing it moderately soon. Because if you don't, I think things are going to start to get a lot worse. You've still got a slight grace period, but the window's closing. Something to think about anyway.